video, we'll briefly go over how to take the output from the OceanView software and make it into an Excel file that you can use. So I'm assuming that you've already collected your spectra, that you have a folder somewhere on your computer that you can find with the absorbance spectra for each of your samples, and that you know what each sample is. Now when it outputs it, it's going to have the timestamp here, but you're going to need to know if it's a blank or which sample it is and things like that. So these files, real briefly, are essentially a long list of wavelengths and absorbance values. And we need to get these into something like Excel where we can graph them easily and search and find the absorption values corresponding to specific wavelengths. So I'm going to go ahead and use Excel for this. If you open up Excel and you open one of these absorbance files, from within Excel, it's going to import them. If you double click on them out in the normal software, it's going to just open them up in the text editor, which doesn't work for us. So you need to change it from looking for all Excel files to just all files, and then you'll see these text files. I'm going to select both of them, click open, and it's going to do a text import wizard. And this is a delimited file with tabs, if that matters, but at least in my version of Excel, I can just hit finish and it does a fine job. So now I have two files that are open. And at the top, there's some basic acquisition parameters. And then down a little ways where it says begin spectral data, you have the start of the spectral data. I'm going to go ahead and save this file. And so we'll just stick it in the same folder, and maybe we'll say Spectra for now. I'm going to change it to an Excel workbook and save. And now I need to sort of pay attention to what's going on here. I'm going to clear out the data we don't need and relabel these columns. So this first column, the A column, I'm going to put down as wavelength. And for the Y data, the absorbance data, I can put in all of the absorbance data for all the runs in a single file. So I'm going to look at this one. This is 8:57 and 24 seconds, and my other file I think was probably earlier, and this is 8:56. So this is my blank data, and the one I have open is my red dye. Okay, and I just have one set of data this time. I'm going to go ahead and delete these rows at the top, and then go to the bottom and check if there's anything there. And an easy way to do that is actually with the keyboard. If you hold down Control and hit the down arrow, it will go to the bottom of the data, any continuous data, and so there's nothing there. So Control and top arrow, and I'm back at the top. I'm going to go ahead and put my blank to the left of this. I could just add it to the right. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to put it to the left. As you click on the column, right click and insert a new column. I create a space. I'm going to put my blank data here. Click in that first cell. And over here, I want to now copy that column of data, the absorbance data for my blank. That's the file I have open. I'm going to hold down Control and Shift, down arrow, and we'll select that entire column. Control C for copy. Come back over to my Spectra file and Control V. Okay, for all of these files, they'll have the same wavelength data, and off we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and plot this now. Let's drag over, and rather than scrolling down, Control Shift down. I'm going to cursor back to the top because I want the graph at the top here, and insert, and under scatter I'm going to select the line, and there's a couple things about this plot that aren't ideal. So first of all, there's some data below 300 nanometers that's going to be extremely noisy and not very useful. And that's because this is where we had very low lamp intensity. And so our data really isn't telling us much. And so I want to get rid of that. And then the other problem is the scaling going from 0 to 900 isn't really focusing on the area that we're interested in, which is right in here. There's two ways to approach fixing this. One would be to delete the data that I don't want to use, and I could highlight down to 299 nanometers and just delete it. Another option is to, within the chart, change the axis options. So if I right-click on the horizontal axis, format axis, then you might need to go back and forth to find it or expand it, but what you want is this axis options. And Excel thought that I wanted to plot from 0, but what I really want to display is from 300 nanometers, and I'm going to only display to 650 nanometers. Okay, and by doing this, I get a smoother set of data that shows data over my range. Now, this isn't ideal data. I'm noticing that this particular spectrum went to negative absorbance. I would have rather that the blank was set up properly and that it was at 0. But for the most part, this is okay. Now, one thing you can do here is you can cursor along a curve, and if you let your cursor sit there, it will pop up a little box, and in this box you can see that my cursor is currently sitting at 506 nanometers and 0.62 absorbance. Okay, and that lets you look around really quickly and find likely data points. So I might say that my absorbance maximum for the red dye standard is at 506 nanometers, and this would be the data that I would choose to quantify the concentration of that dye in the standard. So that's a starting point on this. I've done it with just 2 files, a blank and a red dye, but if you had 6 or 7, all you would do is add more columns with that data. Hopefully that helps, and good luck.